Hello everyone, and welcome to another English Grammar with Max. Today we want to talk about functions in English. Now let's see first what a function is. We use a lot of sentences on a daily basis in English, but what is the purpose of these sentences? Sometimes we are imparting some news. We are saying that, for example, I have a black car. That is a statement. But some other sentences are made because of some purposes in English. For example, a request. Could you give me that piece of paper? It is in the form of a question, but actually it is serving the purpose of request. Suggestion. Let's see a good film tonight. That is a suggestion, so that is a function. Command. Come over here. Advise or advice as a noun. You should do this or you shouldn't do that. Obligation. You must work till late. Permission. You can park your car here. So today we are going to talk about some of these functions and how we make them. Okay, the first function we want to talk about is offering. When we want to offer somebody something, what kind of language or vocabulary do we use? The first one, we can use shall to express offering. Shall I open the door for you? Remember, this is not a request. You're offering help to somebody. But remember, with shall, if it wants to be an offer, it needs to be with the subject I and we only. It means you cannot use this structure or this language with he or she to express offer. Shall is a modal verb which has a lot of functions in English. This is only one of the functions of shall, and we can only use it in a question and with the subject I and we, if we mean offering. The next form of offering is using let me. Let me carry the bag. Again, you're offering help to somebody. This is the essential part of the language, and this is the essential part of this one over here. Another form is would you like some tea? So, would like are the essential parts of this form of language for offering. The next one and the last one we want to talk about today is will for offer. Again, sometimes we say, I'll help you with the exam. This is another form of offer, and the essential part of it is will. The next function is permission, or actually asking for permission. When you want to ask somebody for permission, what language do you use? Again, these are just some examples of this language, and we cannot put a number of the broad variety of language you could use to express a purpose. So these are just some examples of this function. The first one is it all right? Is it all right if I come in? Is it all right if I listen to you? The next one is can I, plus the base form of the main verb. Can I leave early today? Can I sit here? Asking for permission. Next one, the third one and the fourth one are formal. We use them in formal contexts more often. Could I possibly join you? This is very polite and formal. May I have a piece? Again, formal, informal contexts. Okay, the next function is promise. When you want to make a promise to somebody, what language do you use? We use will and won't to express promise. We say, I'll return your car tomorrow. I won't break it. This is again promise, in positive form and in negative form, both. I promise I'll do it. You could add I promise before I will or I won't. And again, this is more emphasis on the function of promise. The next function is request, when you want someone to do something for you. The first form is can you. Can you pass the salt, please, when you're sitting at a dinner table and you're asking for salt? The other form is could you wait here, please? Instead of could, you could say would. Would you wait here, please? That is another form of request. And remember, guys, You should know this because these are modal verbs. It means that our main verb is always in the base form. Don't forget that. We have already talked about it before. So this must be in base form. Can you pass? Could you wait? Or would you wait? Again, we have two formal forms in here. Will you is the formal form. Will you sit? Again, the base form. Will you sit over there, please? This is the polite way of expressing request. Or would you mind is the essential part of this language here. Would you mind, but with one difference. We use a gerund, not the base form anymore. Because of this mind, not because of this modal verb. Would you mind opening the window? So there are 2 points about this last example. The first being, I told you, after would you mind, we always use gerund, the ing form of the main verb. And another one, the answer to this question. If someone asks you this question and you really want them to open the window, you should say, no, I wouldn't mind you opening the window for me, for example. This is a bit confusing for English learners. Our next function is suggestion. When you want to make a suggestion, you have a variety of choices to use. But these are 4 examples. We used let's do this, let's do that. This is a form of making a suggestion. Let's go out. Another one is, why don't we see a film? Why don't we sit here? Why don't we order something? And the next one is, how about? How about some red wine? How about you tell me what's going on? So after this you could use a noun phrase or a clause. We could is another form. We could order in. We could go out. We could see a film. Okay, the last function we are talking about tonight is advice. Of course, there are a lot of other functions, but we'll talk about them in our future videos. Advice. How do we express advice? Or how do we advise somebody to do something? The first form is should. You should see a doctor. And because should is another modal verb, we need to use the base form of the main verb. Another form, which is a little bit more formal, is adding I think to you should. I think you should exercise if you want to sound more polite. And the last one is a second conditional form. If I were you, this is a very common form of formal advice. The second conditional. If I were you, I'd, and this apostrophe D in here is would. And don't forget about this comma here. If I were you, I'd talk to her. It means it's a good idea if you talk to her, or you should talk to her. Okay, let's start with the exercises. Underline the correct word or phrase in each sentence. A. I'm very busy. Let's or would you mind giving me a hand? This is actually asking this is requesting for help. So we use would you mind and plus. After would you mind, after mind we use gerund, not the other forms of verbs. B. If I were you, I'd write, or how about you write the letter again? Because this is not in the form of a question, this is in the form of a statement. So we need to use the second conditional form for the function of advice. C. Why don't we go, or why don't we going to the theater tomorrow? And again, why don't we go? Because we have this auxiliary verb in here. And after this auxiliary verb, we need to use the base form, not the gerund form. And this is actually the function of suggestion. D. Would you mind or could you close the door, please? The answer is could you, because after mind we use gerund, not the base form. E. Do you like or would you like some more water? Do you like, you're asking that person if they are interested in something in general. So that is not the question in here. We are offering something to somebody, so we use would you like some more water. F. I promise I won't do it, or I don't do it again. This is the function of promise, and we use will or won't for this function. G. I'm quite good at cooking too. Shall I help or would I help you? This is offering help to somebody else. So we use shall with I or we and in the form of a question. H. I've a suggestion. Why don't you go, or could you go to the beach? Could you go to the beach? It's, sounds like a request. But in here, we are making a suggestion in the form of a question. I. Would I borrow or could I borrow your ruler? Actually, we generally cannot use would with I, because we could say could I borrow your ruler, because this doesn't make sense when you use would with I or we. J. Are you tired? I think you can go. I think you should go to bed early. The answer is you should go, because this is a form of advice or suggestion. So we use should or ought to. Next exercise. For each question, complete the second sentence so that it means the same as the first, using no more than 3 words. A. Please take a seat. This is asking, this is the function of request or offering someone something. So we could say, would you mind taking a seat? Or for example, would you take a seat? We could also say that. B. Fruit juice would be better for you, and I think you should drink fruit juice. The key to this exercise is that you need to identify the function, then find the corresponding form to that function. Fruit juice would be better for you. This is a form of advice or suggestion, so we use should to express that. C. I'd like you to wait for me. This is the function of request. So could you wait for me, please? Or would you wait for me, please? D. Will you allow me to leave the room? This is the request again. Could I leave the room? You're asking permission. Will you allow me is a request, but it is also asking for permission. E. I'd like you to turn off the television. Again, this is a request. Could you turn off the television? F. Let's go for a walk. This is a suggestion. Why don't we go for a walk? Because it is in the form of a question, we use this structure. G. I promise not to talk to Richard again. This is the function of promise, so I won't talk to Richard again. We use will and won't for promise. H. Would you like me to help you? This is offering help. Shall I help you? Shall with I or we and in the form of a question. I. When does the plane arrive? This is asking for information. Would you mind telling me when the plane arrives? J. My advice is to see a doctor. Actually, it is specifying in the first sentence that this is the function of advice. So, if I were you, I'd see a doctor. And you'd better put a comma in here between the condition and the consequence. Okay guys, thanks for watching another episode of English Grammar with Max. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions or if you have any questions, you can ask me in the comment section and I will do my best to address and answer to them. Thank you. See you next time.